Hello, my name is Jennifer Brandsberg-Engelman, and I'm the lead author and project lead of Regenerative Economics for Secondary Schools. In this short video, I'll be giving you an overview of Topic 3 on markets. In this video, I'll discuss why we've taken our particular approach to markets. I'll review the core content that's included in the textbook. I'll give you some advice if you have very little time to spend on regenerative economics material. And lastly, I'll explain how you can use these materials in your courses. Before we go into the approach that we've taken with regenerative economics, it's worthwhile to spend a few minutes understanding the problem that we're trying to address. If you've watched other videos that we produce, you'll have seen this diagram before. It's how we try to synthesize the problems with mainstream economics courses in secondary schools. The basic problem is that we draw a very narrow systems boundary around markets and treat markets as though they are the economy. This results in a marginalization of all non-market activity, such as that happens from the state, from households, all the unpaid household care and domestic work, and from the commons. It also means that we treat society and the environment as externalities and really only address these elements through the lens of markets. We don't even have a language to discuss them except through market failure. But beyond that, the models that students are taught to use in these courses are based on a number of highly degenerative assumptions that firms are and should be profit maximizing, that price is the metric of value, that both businesses and the economy as a whole should be oriented, or it's fine for it to be oriented on endless and aimless growth. Students are introduced from the day one to the concept of scarcity, which assumes not only limited resources, but also unlimited human needs and wants. And the models also assume selfish human nature, that human behavior is driven by the need and the desire to maximize personal utility. Now, the problems that I've just highlighted with these degenerative assumptions really matter because powerful people in both business and politics have economics degrees. And the economic worldviews that they're taught will shape how they act. And what we have now are decisions and policies across the world that give far too much power to businesses and markets and are undermining ecological and social systems in countries around the world. The regenerative economics course takes a different approach to teaching economics. Markets are still in the course, as they should be, because they are a powerful provisioning institution. But they're only one of 4 provisioning institutions that are covered. We also include households. We actually teach about households, all the unpaid care and domestic work that happens there first. Then we teach markets, then commons, and the state. And these 4 provisioning institutions are given roughly equal weight in the course to reflect the idea that we need diverse ways of organizing for a resilient economy. Now, the economy is then embedded in society, and also in this course, what you'll see is that we don't shy away from talking about values and power and culture and social norms, history, law, and politics. These are woven throughout the course, not treated as something separate from the discipline of economics. And the economy and society are embedded in Earth systems. And with the acknowledgement that every single economic activity we undertake requires living matter and materials and energy from Earth systems, and that every activity produces both waste and heat that feeds back into those systems and impacts the way they function. So in sum, what we've done is we've taken a much wider systems boundary with this course. And that means the focus of the course is not just on markets, but is on a wider array of provisioning institutions and viewing those as embedded in society and Earth systems. You can see how this plays out in the topics of the course. So topic 1 is an introduction. Topics 2 through 5 address each of these 4 provisioning institutions. Topic 6 is on money and finance, and topic 7 is on international exchanges. We also have a topic S on systems, which can be broken up into pieces and woven through the course as needed when the topics are relevant. But the topic on systems really applies to the entire course because the entire course is using systems thinking. This is what the website looks like, and you can see here circled in red, these are the materials on markets which are in the textbook. Everything that we have written is published online with a Creative Commons license, and that means you can use the materials as you wish. You can copy them directly, you can print them out, manipulate them, make slides out of them, whatever it is you'd like to do in your normal classroom practice, you can do with these materials. You can see in this drop-down menu that the subtopic on markets, that the topic of markets has 4 subtopics. And what I'm going to do now is just quickly run through the content that's there so you have an idea of what's available to you. 3.1 is the basics. What are markets? And in that section, we cover the market as a system. We look at demand and supply, but we do not use linear demand and supply diagrams. Instead, we use feedback loops. I would not recommend that you swap in this section for teaching on demand and supply with your students, because if they have to take a high stakes exam at the end, then they really do need to be focused on those linear demand and supply models. But as educators, I think you might find this alternative approach really interesting to look at, and we've included it as well for curriculum authorities because we'd like to encourage them to really rethink the basic supply and demand diagrams and whether they're actually needed in these courses. 3.1.3 is on elasticity, a familiar topic in most economics courses. Then we go into a broad explanation of the uses and limitations of markets. And again, you can see in 3.1.5 and 3.1.6, the embeddedness. So talking about how markets and business activity is dependent on and impacts our systems, and how businesses both shape and are shaped by social factors. Now, in every one of the topics, we do spend time talking about the problems with our current systems, and topic 3 is no different. We have this section 3.2 on markets that addresses capitalism, power, and inequalities. When we look at the problems that we face now in our current economic systems, power and inequalities figure again and again and again in these topics. What we've produced here are 2 sections on capitalism. It's quite a long topic with a lot of material, so we divided it into 2 sections, one of them looking at the definition and development of capitalism, and then also separately an evaluation of capitalism. I have these 2 starred because I think these 2 sections are quite important for students to understand what capitalism is and what it is not, in particular to be able to distinguish capitalism from market-based activity, because the 2 things, though tightly intertwined, are not the same thing. And so coming to an understanding of what capitalism is and why people criticize it, I think is extremely important and is not something that they're getting currently in their mainstream courses. Section 3.2.3 is on law and markets, which explains quite clearly why markets need laws. In fact, markets can't really exist without states and their laws because they need to, in order for something to be sold, it has to be private property, and it can't be private property unless you have laws that enforce private property rights. But it also this section goes into the role of fairness and freedom, discusses property rights, of course, and their reinforcement of power and inequalities. Section 3.2.4 is on market power. So this has a lot of overlap with our mainstream economics courses, except that we're using feedback loops to illustrate many of the problems with market power instead of the market structure diagrams that students often are exposed to. And then the last section, 3.2.5, is moral limits of markets. And I've put stars around this because I think that if you only have time to do one thing from the materials to integrate into your teaching on markets, that it should be this. And I'll explain a little bit more detail why this is the case a bit later in the slides. So this section 3.2 is really the critique of current systems. Now, that leaves 2 subtopics, 3.3 and 3.4, where we can actually look at the positive case for regenerative businesses. And 3.3 is focused on the donut design for business. So we have devoted this entire subtopic to the materials and the ideas that have been developed by the Donut Economics Action Lab using the work of Marjorie Kelly. And this addresses how if businesses want to move in a regenerative direction, it's not simply enough that they choose a purpose, but they have to look at a regenerative purpose, but they also have to look at the design of the business itself. Because if you don't do that, then it could be that the design of the business actually gets in the way of achieving regenerative goals. So this section looks at gives an overview of the deep design of firms, then it looks at the purpose of firms, networks and governance of firms, ownership of firms, and the financing of firms. Now, this section of material is not something that always appears. Going more deeply into business is not something that happens in many economics courses at secondary school level. But I will also point out that this material is also wholly appropriate to take up in business classes. So if your school is also running a business course, you can share this section with your business teachers, and actually the material integrates really easily into mainstream courses that often have separate sections about ownership and financing and networks and governance and purpose and this kinds of things. So this is really well structured to be able to seed into business courses. Finally, we've got the final subtopic, which is also on regenerative businesses, but takes up some other issues. One is about regenerative entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. We've included intrapreneurship there because actually having intrapreneurs in industries to help them make the transition towards more regenerative business activities is extremely important and often ignored. Entrepreneurship is really, exciting and, often involves a bit of hero worship. The intrapreneurship aspect, though, is, I would argue, even more important. And so we've included both of those in that section. We've also included circular business models, the issue of relocalization and bioregionalism in business, the role of external certification and support organizations, and then finally the role of the state in terms of what the state can do to reduce extractive business practices and also support the growth of regenerative businesses. So that rounds out the content for the topic 3. As I mentioned earlier, if you have time for only one thing, my recommendation is to take up 3.2.5 on the moral limits of markets. This section we wrote is based on the work of Michael Sandel. He's a political philosopher at Harvard University. He teaches or has taught, I don't know whether he's still teaching it or not, but one of the most popular courses at Harvard called Justice, which is also available on edX online. And he wrote a book some years ago called What Money Can't Buy, The Moral Limits of Markets, which is where we got the title for this section. Now, why am I arguing that you should take this up if you don't do anything else? Firstly, our current courses usually don't critique markets, except when we're talking about monopolies and oligopolies and concentration of market power. But I think it's very important for students to understand that the critique needs to go broader than this, and that markets are actually not appropriate for meeting all human needs. And there are a number of reasons for this. First, that markets tend to reinforce economic inequality. Second, that markets change the way we view and value things. And third, that markets crowd out important social values. So just to address these in turn relatively quickly, markets reinforce economic inequality. When we use markets for meeting basic human needs, it means that people with low incomes may not be able to access the basics, while the wealthy can access more and better resources and amplify both their wealth and their power. Better healthcare, better education, healthier food, more energy, cleaner water, etc. But probably most importantly is more political voice. So we have a huge problem with state capture and corruption around the world, and this is directly related to the growth of wealth and income inequality around the world, and markets exacerbate those inequalities. So that's the first issue. Secondly, markets change the way we view and value things. So in order to be sold in a market, a thing must be private property. We build on the work of Katharina Pistor in this section. And she talks about this process of turning things into private property as coding capital, coding things as capital or commodifying them. When you code something as capital or commodify it, it changes the way we view and value it. So you move from things having intrinsic value to instrumental value. And the problem is that things with instrumental value are more often exploited because we no longer view them as having intrinsic worth. So we have to be extremely careful about the things that we commodify and sell in markets. And this is one of the parts of the very complex discussions around organ markets and surrogacy and patents and putting prices on nature. So this can help students sort of grapple with the intrinsic problem of coding something as capital. The third point here is that markets crowd out important social values. So when we pay for voluntary activities, we can actually crowd out or replace intrinsic motivations like altruism and civic duty with extrinsic ones like money. If you've ever thought about how odd it might be to pay a good friend of yours who comes around to help you move house, you can see what I'm talking about here. This is a final issue is that markets can crowd out important social values. So paying for voluntary activities can actually crowd out or replace intrinsic motivations like altruism and civic duty, reciprocity, etc., with extrinsic ones like money. And the issue is that intrinsic motivation is much stronger and more enduring than extrinsic motivation. But once you push out intrinsic motivation with an extrinsic motivator like money, it may not return. So this argument about the problems with markets crowding out social values is a part of the discussions about whether we should pay people to give blood, the role of bonuses, and how they distort activities in businesses, and whether we should pay kids to read or do housework, that kind of thing. This is what the section looks like, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what content you can expect to have in these sections in the book. You can see it here. The sections are structured the same way throughout the book, which makes it nice for you and also for the students because it's quite predictable. So at the top, you have some helpful prior knowledge and learning objectives. This helpful prior learning does not have to be covered before you cover the material in this section, but we are trying where we can to make links with other sections so that you can see how different ideas kind of thread their way through the book. You'll see every section starts with a hook, which is an interesting story to try to get students interested in the work. And then you've got the different sections of the text. So these are chunked or grouped or signposted to help make reading the text easier. You can see here, for example, these are the moral limits of markets. And this is what I just explained to you about markets reinforcing inequality, that markets change how we view and value things, that they crowd out social values. So those three things that I just showed you are here in the book as the main text. Then you'll see after the main text, there's a set of activities, anywhere from 1 to sometimes 5 or even 6 activities, depending on which direction you want to take the lesson. We have created these activities. Most of them are doable in one class period. So we've tried to be very practical about teachers' time, knowing the constraints that you face. So you can see here, for example, this is an activity that has students looking at different goods and services and trying to make a decision about whether they think markets should provide all, some, or none of these items, and an explanation of why. And this can get them discussing the nature of different kinds of goods and services and when they might be appropriate, when markets might be appropriate or not. The second option, should children be paid for doing housework? Also quite a fun one to do with students where they can pull from the ideas in the section and also their own lived experience to have a conversation about what happens when we pay young people for doing housework. Option 3, should we put a price on nature? Obviously an enormous topic, hugely important given the extent to which nature is being commodified often in the name of trying to preserve it, but with some significant possible negative consequences as well. So we've given students 3 sources there. In this case, the activity would probably take longer than 40 minutes because you would want to give them some time to research before they have a discussion. So after the activities section, there are 5 checking for understanding questions. These are auto-marked. The students actually asked for these. They like to have some confirmation that they understand what's come in the text. We also have some links for further exploration. So if students are really interested in the topic, that there are some other things they can explore. We've given also the sources that we use to write the topic and a list of terminology, along with a Quizlet list, so that students can play various games with the terminology that's used in the section. So that's what the book looks like. And so now I've just come close to the end. Now I want to give you some ideas for how you can use these materials. If you are teaching a mandated course, such as the A-levels, the IB, Cambridge International courses, AP, the Indian CBSE, or any other national curricula, you could seed your courses with regenerative economics materials as and when you can. So, you might be able to take up this section on the moral limits of markets at some point when you're teaching the basics of markets in your mainstream course. Many teachers who are using the materials use a flipped classroom, so they are having students read the material before they come to class, and then they're spending their class time on one of the activities that we've provided, or perhaps one that they've come up with themselves. Another idea for schools that have more freedom is to develop an elective course that could be a unit, a semester, a year, or even 2 years. Or these materials can often be integrated into other subjects. So for example, I pointed out that the 3.3 section can be easily integrated into a business course. Students could also take this up as an extracurricular activity, either with a teacher guide or even as a self-study group on their own. And I've given some ideas here, like in the Netherlands, you might be able to integrate some of this material in the choice topics, the IB, in the TOK, Theory of Knowledge course. Almost everything here is a challenge to the mainstream, and so this is quite good in terms of helping students understand how knowledge is constructed. And then looking at another option for the A-levels is the EPQ. You might, in your own curriculum, also have opportunities for integrating into choice topics or projects or this kind of thing. Lastly, I'd just like to advocate or to ask you to participate in education institution reviews. It's really, really important that if you want change and there are opportunities for you to participate in shaping the curriculum that you and others in your country or in your international institution have to teach, you should really take those because we need more people sitting at the table who can advocate for change. If you're looking to find footholds in your curriculum, we have started doing some curriculum mapping. You can see that just in the left-hand column menu, just under the Regenerative Economics textbook. When you go to that page, you'll see here in the middle, there are a few videos about how to use the curriculum maps. But if you click on the map itself, and you can see here, we've got the IB and we've also got Cambridge International. But if you scroll down, you'll find more education institutions and curricula as well. If you click on the link, you'll see it'll take you to a spreadsheet that in the left-hand column will have your curriculum. In the middle column, we'll have some links to regenerative economics that you might be able to use in that section of your curriculum, along with some notes and comments to help give you some further guidance. I would encourage you to take this up and also let us know what you're doing, because your action really matters, particularly right now. We've got a huge window of opportunity because there are a number of national and international organizations that are revising economics or revising their national curriculum, including the International Baccalaureate in Netherlands, who are both looking at economics right now. but England and Scotland, who are reviewing their entire national curriculum. And our theory of change is that if we can shift these 4 institutions in a positive direction, that it will likely set off global social tipping points around the world. And so your participation is really helping us build the social proof to move towards those social tipping points. So please consider taking it up. And if you need help, do let me know. My email address is on the website. You can make an appointment with me, and I'd be happy to talk through your situation and give you some advice.